Mom's pain was so intense. What should we do now? This small voice pierced the calm of the cemetery, fragile like a leaf clinging to a branch in icy November. Richard Collins froze. He had come to pay his respects at his late wife's grave, not to discover two little girls kneeling before the stone, their frail shoulders shaken by the wind. The older one, no more than 6 years old, whispered those words to the stone as if it could respond. The younger one, her twin, clung to her sister's sleeve, eyes shining with tears. Richard gripped the bouquet of lilies tighter. His breath formed a cloud in the cold air as he approached. "Mademoiselle," he said gently, "is everything all right?" The two heads turned in unison. Two identical faces with heart-shaped features, dark curls, frightened gazes. The older one stood up quickly, trying to show courage. "We didn't mean to disturb you, sir. We came to see Mom." "Ah, your mom?" Richard asked, his voice hesitant. The younger one whispered that she would be here when she was tired. He lowered his eyes to the grave. Grace Collins, beloved wife, light to all. His throat tightened. Grace had been gone for 2 years. He had no children. He had buried all his dreams of fatherhood with her. Yet here were 2 little girls, calling her mom. "What are your names?" he asked softly. "I'm Anna," the older one replied, standing straight despite the cold. "This is Mia." "And how old are you?" "6, sir. We're twins." He gave a weak smile. "I can see that." His eyes noticed the threadbare gloves, the mismatched shoes. Their coats were too light. "Are you here alone?" Anna hesitated, then nodded. "Mom is in the hospital. She said if she got too sick, we should come find Mrs. Collins. She promised to help us." Richard blinked. "Mrs. Collins?" "Yes, sir," said Mia. "Mom said Mrs. Collins was our guardian angel." The world seemed to tilt. Grace had been a volunteer at the hospital for years, helping those who couldn't pay, never mentioning it at home. "What is your mother's name?" he asked, though part of him already feared the answer. "Angela Bennett," Anna replied. Richard felt the name strike him deep. Not recognition, but something stranger, heavier, like a memory delivered by hand. "How did she know my wife?" Mia rummaged in her small pink backpack and pulled out a laminated ID card, folded. Grace's smiling face stared back. "Hospital volunteer." "Thank you." "Mom said this lady helped her when she was in need," Mia murmured. "She said if something bad happened, Mrs. Collins would keep her promise." Richard's knees buckled. He crouched to their level. "And where are you staying now?" "At the shelter, sir, but it's full now, so sometimes at the bus stop. It's warm there at night." Those words pierced him. "You can't stay at a bus stop," he said firmly. "It's not safe." Anna's chin trembled. "We didn't know where else to go. Mom said, 'Come here,' and Mrs. Collins would know what to do." When these little girls said their mother had asked them to find Mrs. Collins, something in Richard's heart, and perhaps in ours, broke. It reminds us that kindness never truly dies. It simply finds new hands to carry it. If this moment touched you, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more soul-touching stories. The wind swept through the cemetery, rattling the iron gate. Richard looked at the grave, Grace's name etched in soft stone, and felt the old pain rise in his chest. Even in death, she was still helping people, keeping promises he had never known about. He turned to the girls. "You can't stay outside tonight. Come with me. I'll take you somewhere warm." Anna hesitated. "But you don't know us." "I knew your mom's friend," Richard said calmly. "And if Grace made a promise, I'll make sure it's kept." He held out his hand. After a long pause, Anna placed her small palm in his. Her sister followed, clutching her coat. Together they left the cemetery under a sky streaked with gold. At the gate, Richard glanced back at Grace's grave. The lilies in his hand trembled. He whispered, "Grace, what have you done?" They drove in silence through the city. The girls sat side by side in the back, watching the lights dance on the windows. "Are you hungry?" he asked. "Yes," Mia murmured. "We had cookies at the shelter." Richard stopped at a quiet roadside diner. The waitress, a woman about his age, raised an eyebrow seeing him enter with 2 little girls, but she smiled kindly. "3 sandwiches," he said, "and hot chocolate." Anna folded her hands on the table, her manners careful. "Thank you, sir." Mia smiled shyly. "Mom says to always say thank you, even when life forgets to be kind." Richard felt something crack inside him. Grace had said something almost identical once. Kindness doesn't wait to be earned. After dinner, he took them to Mercy Hospital. The antiseptic smell hit him like a memory. Grace had spent her last nights here, whispering to him about the light beyond the pain. He approached the nurse's desk. "Angela Bennett," he said. The nurse frowned. "Room. She's in intensive care." He nodded. "Thank you." Anna clutched her coat as they walked down the hallway. "Do you think she's awake?" "I hope so," Richard said. "She'll be glad to see you." The room was dim, only the soft glow of the heart monitor lit it. A woman lay pale and still, oxygen tubes coming from her face. "Mom?" Anna whispered, rushing forward. Angela's eyes opened weakly. "My girls." Her voice was just a whisper. "You found her?" Richard stepped closer. "You mean Grace?" Angela nodded weakly. "She kept her promise." He frowned. "What promise?" Her gaze on the twins, a faint smile appeared. "That they would never be alone." The monitor beeped steadily. The girls climbed onto the bed, pressing their faces against her arms. Richard stood there, watching in silence, his heart heavy and perplexed. Grace had always said she wanted her kindness to outlive her. Somehow, it had. And watching the two little girls clinging to their mother, he understood that perhaps Grace hadn't left him alone. Perhaps she had sent him a reason to live again. The steady beep of the heart monitor echoed in the hospital room like a fragile pulse of time. Richard stood at the foot of the bed, hands buried in his coat pockets, unsure if he should stay or step back. The twins clung to their mother, murmuring words too low to hear. Angela Bennett seemed incredibly fragile. Her brown skin paled under the fluorescent light. That night, he didn't take them back to a hotel. He took them home. The Collins estate was a peaceful expanse outside the city, surrounded by maples and infused with a faint smell of rain. The girls fell asleep in the car, their small heads resting against each other. Richard carried them inside, one by one, and tucked them into the guest room. The house felt different that night. Not empty anymore, but alive again, filled with soft breathing and the quiet whisper of dreams. He stood in the doorway watching them. In the flickering light of the bedside lamp, he thought he saw Grace's smile reflected on their faces. Later, in his study, he poured himself a glass of whiskey and sat by the fireplace. He opened an old photo album. Grace at the hospital, laughing with patients, holding newborns. And there, he stopped. A photo of her with a young woman smiling at two babies swaddled in pink blankets written in Grace's neat hand below. Angela and her miracles. He traced the words with his finger. Grace had known. She had planned it all. He looked toward the hallway where the girls slept. "Grace," he murmured, "you did it again." The wind outside rattled the windows, but for the first time in years, the sound didn't feel lonely. It sounded like an answer. The next morning, Richard woke to the sound of laughter echoing faintly down the hallway. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. Grace's voice, warm and melodic, floating through the house like old times. But stepping into the hallway, he realized it wasn't Grace. It was Anna and Mia. They were in the kitchen, perched on the counter, swinging their legs and giggling while the housekeeper, Mrs. Turner, tried to teach them to crack eggs. "Don't tap too hard, dear, or it'll explode," Mrs. Turner warned. Her gray bun bobbed as she turned. Anna gently tapped an egg on the bowl's edge, then smiled when it cracked cleanly in two. "Like that. Perfect," Mrs. Turner said proudly. When she saw Richard in the doorway, she smiled. "Good morning, Mr. Collins. Looks like you rose early." He managed a weak smile. "This is new." "They're sweet girls," Mrs. Turner said, "though I admit I was a bit surprised when they appeared." She lowered her voice. "Relatives of your wife?" Richard hesitated. "Something like that." Mrs. Turner watched him but didn't pry. "Breakfast will be ready soon." As she turned back to the stove, Mia hopped down from the counter and ran to Richard, brandishing a whisk like a trophy. We're helping. Mrs. Turner says we're chefs now. Is that so? Richard asked, crouching. Then I'm the lucky customer. She nodded enthusiastically. Do you like pancakes? I love pancakes. He didn't really. Grace had always been the one who adored them, but saying it felt right. Anna smiled shyly. Mom used to make them on Saturdays with blueberries. Her voice wavered slightly on Mom, and Richard's heart clenched. We can make them here too, he said softly, if you want. After breakfast, he called his lawyer, Thomas Reed, a man he'd known for 20 years. Loyal, pragmatic, the type to believe in order more than emotions. When Thomas arrived later that morning, he was polite, but visibly curious about the two children chasing each other across the living room rug. You've been busy, Richard? He said, setting down his briefcase. Care to explain? Richard told him everything, from finding the girls at Grace's grave to Angela's last words. Thomas listened without interrupting, though his expression grew increasingly skeptical. And you brought them here? Yes, Richard said. They have nowhere else. You realize what this looks like? Thomas said cautiously. The press will have a field day. 2 street kids living with one of the city's richest men. It'll make waves. Richard's jaw tightened. Let them talk. Thomas sighed. We can't ignore optics, Richard. The board is already nervous. Because of your recent absences, this could make things worse. Grace helped their mother, Richard said. These girls are her responsibility now, which makes them mine. Thomas watched him long. You sound like her, he said quietly. Maybe that's not so bad. Later, when Thomas left, Richard stood at the window, watching Anna and Mia chase each other in the garden. Their laughter floated through the open door like sunbeams. For the first time in years, the house no longer felt like a tomb. That afternoon, he took the girls to the hospital for Angela's discharge papers. The social worker, an energetic woman named Carla Simons, greeted them in the lobby. Mr. Collins, she said, flipping through a file, I understand you've taken the children temporarily. That's correct. We'll need to discuss long-term arrangements. Foster placement, hosting options, guardianship. You and Miss Bennett were related? No, but my late wife was their godmother. Carla adjusted her glasses. Legally, that holds no weight. Richard met her gaze. Morally, it does. She sighed. Mr. Collins, I'm not questioning your intentions, but this process takes time. There will be evaluations, background checks, court approvals. Do what you must, he said calmly. But in the meantime, they stay with me. Anna clung to his hand, her small fingers gripping tight. Carla hesitated, then nodded. I'll start the paperwork. Leaving the hospital, Mia looked up at him. Do we have to leave now? No, he said softly. You're coming home with me. She smiled, her eyes lighting with fragile but pure trust. On the way, the sun broke through the clouds, casting long rays across the windshield. Anna rested her head against the window. Do you think Mom is with Mrs. Collins now? I think, Richard said softly, she's watching over all of us. That night, the girls insisted on saying a prayer before bed. They knelt by the guest room bed, hands clasped. Dear God, Anna murmured, tell Mom and Mrs. Collins we're okay, and thank you for the kind man who made us pancakes. Richard stood unseen in the doorway. His throat burned. After they fell asleep, he walked the hallways of his house, passing framed photos of professional awards, charity galas, smiling faces he barely remembered. For years, success had been his armor. Now, it seemed meaningless. In the quiet of his study, he opened Grace's old journal, the one she kept during her volunteering. The first page began with a quote in her elegant handwriting. Kindness is not a duty. It's proof that our hearts still work. He turned the pages slowly until an entry dated 6 years earlier. Angela Bennett, pregnant and alone. I paid her bills. I told her she would never be alone again. I hope I can keep this promise. He closed the book and stared at the fire. You kept it, Grace, he murmured. And now it's my turn. The next morning, as dawn stretched pale light through the windows, Richard found the twins curled on the couch, tangled in a blanket, fast asleep. He stood there a long time, the quiet hum of the city outside mingling with their soft breathing, He had lost time, his wife, his purpose, his faith in kindness. But in a way he didn't yet understand, Grace had given him a second chance. And watching the two little girls sleep peacefully in his home, he understood that keeping her promise might be the path to finding the light again. When Richard woke, the house was already buzzing with movement. He heard the light patter of small feet running down the hallway, followed by Mia's delighted squeal. For a moment, he lay in bed, listening. The sound was foreign to his home, warm, chaotic, unexpected. It filled the empty spaces left by Grace's absence. When he entered the kitchen, Mrs. Turner had lined the girls up at the table with bowls of oatmeal and a plate of sliced strawberries. Anna looked up, spoon halfway to her mouth. "Good morning, Mr. Collins." "Good morning," he said, a weak smile on his lips. He hadn't realized how much the word could feel like sunshine. Mrs. Turner poured him coffee. "They've already done their chores," she said amusedly. "Well, their version of chores. They tried folding napkins. God bless them." Anna puffed her chest proudly. "We helped." Richard glanced at the pile of crookedly folded napkins on the counter. A smile escaped him. "You did," he said softly. "And they're perfect." After breakfast, he took them to a small park by the river. Grace had loved this place. She fed the ducks and said calm was a form of prayer. The girls ran ahead on the path, their laughter echoing over the water. For the first time in 2 years, Richard left his phone in the car. He sat on the bench where Grace had once read him her favorite poem about hope. The sunlight hit the river just right, scattering reflections like diamonds on the surface. Anna climbed up beside him. "Mrs. Turner says you make computers or something?" He chuckled softly. "I built programs that helped people work faster." "Why don't you do it anymore?" she asked. He hesitated, "Because I stopped believing it mattered." Anna frowned thoughtfully. "Mrs. Collins wouldn't like that." He laughed softly. "No, she wouldn't." Mia ran up holding a heart-shaped yellow leaf. "Look, it's like love." Richard took it gently between his fingers, studying its delicate veins. "Yes," he said quietly. "Exactly like love." On the way back, he passed a row of billboards bearing his company's logo, Collins Tech, building the future. The words felt hollow now. When they arrived home, a black SUV was parked in the driveway. Richard frowned. Beside it stood a man in a dark suit. Robert Davidson, chairman of Collins Tech's board, tall, impeccable, the type to speak in press releases. "Richard," he said sharply, "we need to talk." Anna and Mia instinctively clung to his coat. "It's okay," Richard said softly. "Go inside with Mrs. Turner." Once alone, Davidson crossed his arms. "You've missed 2 board meetings. The press is circulating rumors." He gestured sharply at the door. "And now you're housing 2 children." Richard's expression hardened. "Their mother is dying. My wife made them a promise. I'm keeping it." "Richard," Davidson said, lowering his voice, "you have a public image to protect. People are already speculating about your mental health, wondering if grief has gotten the better of you." Richard cut him off. Grace believed compassion was worth more than image. "If it cost me a title, so be it." Davidson stared, surprised. "You can't save everyone." "Maybe not," Richard replied, "but I can save someone." When the man left, Richard stood a moment in the driveway, the wind tugging at his coat. Grace had once told him people only opposed kindness because they feared it would ask something of them. Inside, the twins were building a cushioned fort on the couch. They looked up when he entered. "Did the man bring trouble?" Anna asked cautiously. "No," Richard said, smiling. "Just noise." That night, they watched an old movie, one of Grace's favorites. The girls laughed at the black and white comedy scenes, their peals of laughter spilling into the quiet room. When the credits rolled, Anna yawned and leaned against him. "Do we stay here forever?" she asked sleepily. He hesitated. "Do you want to?" She nodded. "It feels like home," Mia murmured, half asleep. "Even the walls are kind." Richard's chest tightened in that tender, unfamiliar way that meant something was breaking, trying to heal. After tucking them in, he sat by the fireplace staring at the flames. Grace's portrait hung on the mantel, her smile soft and knowing. "I think I understand now," he murmured. "You weren't just helping Angela. You were helping me." He opened his laptop for the first time in months. The screen glowed cold and sterile. He began typing an email to the board. "Effective today, I am taking indefinite leave. My priorities have changed." The next morning, he took the girls shopping for school supplies. They chose backpacks, one pink, one purple, and argued joyfully over the best-colored pencils. Leaving the store, a photographer snapped a photo. Richard heard the click, but ignored it. Hours later, his phone buzzed with an alert. Weary billionaire resurfaces with 2 mysterious children. He exhaled slowly. It was starting. That night, tucking the girls in, Anna looked up. "Why do people take pictures of you?" "Because they don't understand me," he said softly. "Or maybe they just want to." "Mom said people are afraid of what they don't understand," Mia murmured. "But Mrs. Collins said love is for that." Richard smiled weakly. She was right. When he turned off the light, the house was quiet again, but not empty. He stood at the window, watching the city lights in the distance. For the first time, he no longer felt like he was watching the world from behind glass. He was part of it. And though he didn't yet know what storms were coming, he knew this. Grace had given him a mission no title could distort. He would protect Anna and Mia, not out of pity, but out of love. And love, he understood, was the only legacy worth keeping. The following days passed in a fragile rhythm that felt almost ordinary. Richard rose early again, not out of duty, but because laughter in the kitchen had replaced silence. In those mornings, Anna and Mia had transformed the house into something alive. Their drawings covered the fridge door. Their small shoes waited at the entry like a promise someone would always come home. Wednesday morning on the terrace, sipping coffee, he watched the twins chase each other in the garden. Anna's bright yellow scarf fluttered behind her like a banner. Mia's laughter cut through the crisp air like a melody. It was a sound Grace would have loved. For the first time in 2 years, he smiled without guilt. His phone buzzed. It was Thomas again. Richard sighed and answered. "Hello, Thomas." "Richard, you need to see what's circulating. It's already on half the news feeds." Richard went inside, turned on the TV, and there was his face, his house, 2 small blurred figures in the background. The headline, "Tainted Legacy. Billionaire Richard Collins hides 2 unknown children in luxury estate." His stomach knotted. A commentator's voice filled the room. "Charity scandal or something darker? Collins Tech refuses comment on his recent behavior." He was done. The silence that followed was heavier than before. When the girls ran in breathless and laughing, he forced a smile. "How about the bookstore today?" Mia clapped. "Can we get fairy tales?" "Anything you want," he said. He knew he couldn't shield them from the noise forever, but he would try. At the bookstore, the twins chose storybooks and a stuffed dog they named Pumpkin. At the checkout, the middle-aged cashier gave Richard a long, curious look. "Are they yours?" she asked, trying for casual but failing. "They're family," he said simply. The woman's smile faltered. "You're doing a good deed." He nodded without adding more. Outside, a man with a camera stood by the car. "Mr. Collins, who are the girls? A secret family?" Anna hid behind him. "Why is he yelling?" Richard opened the door, settling the girls inside. "He's just lost," he said. "Are we in trouble?" Mia whispered. He crouched to meet her eyes. "No, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong." At home, Thomas was waiting on the porch, arms crossed. "I told you the media would twist everything." "I don't care," Richard said flatly. "You should. The board is calling an emergency vote. They deem you unstable. They might try to force you out." Richard stared past him at the twins through the window. They were showing Mrs. Turner their new book, laughing as if nothing in the world was wrong. "If I lose the company, I lose it. But I won't abandon them." Thomas's voice softened. "Richard, listen. You're not just protecting 2 kids. You're fighting a system that doesn't forgive. You'll need to be smart." "Grace wouldn't run," Richard said calmly, "and neither will I." That night, he couldn't sleep. The phone buzzed endlessly. Reporters, investors, people he hadn't seen in years suddenly demanding explanations. He ignored them all. Instead, he walked the hallway to check on the girls. They slept curled together under a mountain of blankets. On the nightstand sat the stuffed dog and an old photo of Grace, hair windswept, holding a newborn in a hospital blanket. Angela's child, perhaps. Richard felt something shift in him, a resolve sharper than grief. The next morning he scheduled a press conference. Thomas nearly choked on his coffee when he heard. "You're inviting the press after all this?" "Yes," Richard said. "I'm done hiding." By noon, the front lawn swarmed with cameras. Richard stood on the steps, the twins at his sides. Their small hands gripped his jacket. Reporters shouted questions. He raised a hand for silence. "My name is Richard Collins. 2 years ago I lost my wife, Grace. She was the heart of everything I believed in. Before she died, she made a promise to a woman named Angela Bennett. A promise that her daughters would never be alone." He looked down at Anna and Mia. "These are Angela's girls. Grace kept her promise in spirit, and now I keep it in her name." The crowd fell silent. He continued, voice firm. "You can write whatever headlines you want. Say what you will about me. But know this. If compassion ruins my reputation, then it was never worth keeping." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then a reporter asked softly, "What happens to the girls now?" "They stay here," Richard said. "They're home." The questions resumed louder, but he turned, guiding the twins inside. As soon as the door closed, Anna looked up. "You were brave." He smiled, kneeling. "You think so?" She nodded solemnly. "Mrs. Collins would be proud." He swallowed the sudden lump in his throat. "I hope so, Anna. I really do." That night, he found the girls by the fireplace drawing on scrap paper. Mia held hers up proudly, a tall man holding 2 little girls' hands under a sky full of hearts. "It's us," she said. "And up there, Mom and Mrs. Collins in the clouds." He took the drawing, eyes burning. "It's beautiful," he murmured. When they went to bed, he lingered in the doorway, listening to their soft breathing. He understood the world's noise no longer mattered. For the first time in years, his house was full of life, and his broken, scarred heart had found its rhythm again. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. There would be fallout, consequences, more scrutiny. But standing there, he felt Grace's presence like a calm light in the room. "Whatever comes next," he murmured, "we'll face it together." And for the first time, he believed it. The morning after the press conference, the air around the Collins estate was strangely calm. The entrance gates were silent. No reporters, no cameras, no chaos. For the first time in days, Richard felt a fragile peace. He stood at his study window, coffee cooling in his hands. The first golden rays of sun cut through the garden. In the kitchen, Anna and Mia's voices floated bright and comforting. Mrs. Turner hummed an old gospel while frying eggs. Mia helped set the table, though most napkins ended up crooked. Anna, perched on an overturned stool, flipped pancakes with surprising precision. Richard leaned in the doorway. "You're becoming a real chef, Anna." She beamed. "Mrs. Turner says pancakes make people happy." "It's true," Richard said softly, "especially when made with love." After breakfast, he took the girls to the car. It was their official first day of school, a small private academy just outside the city. Grace had donated to the same school, saying every child deserved a place to feel safe. Anna still wore her yellow scarf. Mia had her hair in 2 braids tied with pink ribbons. She looked both excited and nervous. "You'll be wonderful," Richard said, kneeling to their level. "Just be kind. The rest will follow." Mia hugged him tight. "You'll come get us?" "Of course," he said with a smile. "You're stuck with me now." The drive was quiet at first. The girls watched the city pass by the window. At arrival, a few parents stared at the scene. Some curious, some polite, others less so. Richard noticed the looks but kept his focus on the girls. "Heads high," he murmured. "You belong here." The principal, Mrs. Jenkins, greeted them warmly at the gate. "Welcome, Anna. Welcome, Mia. We're so happy to have you." Anna clung to Richard's hand. He leaned down and whispered, "You okay? I'll be here at 3. She nodded, trying to be brave, then let go. As they disappeared behind the school doors, Richard felt a pang in his chest, the same he felt when Grace left for the airport. Love and fear always travel together. Back at the office, Thomas was waiting in the conference room, pacing. "You caused an earthquake," he said as soon as Richard entered. "I told the truth," Richard replied, sitting. Thomas ran a hand through his hair. "You also dropped the company's stock 8% overnight." Richard didn't flinch. "It'll recover or it won't. Either way, I'm done living by numbers." Thomas stared, baffled. "You're really changing, Richard." Richard looked out the window, his reflection pale against the horizon. "Maybe I'm finally becoming who Grace thought I could be." Later that afternoon, he returned to the school. The girls waited at the gate, backpacks on shoulders, smiling. Mia ran first. "I made a friend." "That's wonderful," he said, lifting her into his arms. "What's her name?" "Sarah," Mia said proudly. "She has freckles and likes frogs." Anna smiled too, but smaller, more uncertain. "It was okay," she said when he asked. "Some kids asked why we live with you." Richard hesitated. "What did you say?" "That you're our family because you promised." His heart clenched. "That's exactly right." On the way home, they stopped at the park. The afternoon light was soft, golden, the kind Grace loved to photograph. The girls played on the swings while Richard sat on the same bench he once shared with Grace. He sensed someone approach. Turning, a well-dressed woman stood beside him, expression unreadable. "Mr. Collins?" she asked. "I'm Inspector Lorna. May I speak with you?" Richard's stomach nodded. "About what?" She handed him a card. "The Angela Bennett case. There are inconsistencies in her medical file. I need to confirm some points." He frowned. "What kind of inconsistencies?" "Her file lists no next of kin, yet someone paid all her bills in cash. No trace. We thought anonymous donor, but the hospital flagged it after your press conference." Richard nodded. "Grace handled her expenses." Inspector Lorna nodded slowly. "Then perhaps you can help locate the payment origins? It's probably nothing, but there's talk she may have been pressured to sign documents before her death." The word pressured hung in the air like smoke. Richard clenched his fists. "I'll cooperate fully," he said, voice tense. "But I can tell you right now, Grace would never harm her." "I believe that," the inspector said calmly, "but I think someone else might have." The inspector returned 2 days later, a November morning when frost drew patterns on the windows. Richard met her in the study, door closed. The girls were at school. The house, unusually silent, seemed to hold its breath. She placed a thick folder on the mahogany desk. "We traced the payments. 19 cash deposits over 6 years, always the same amount, 3,147s. She opened the folder to photocopies of deposit slips, craft envelopes, hospital-stamped receipts. The cashier remembers a tall woman, brown hair, red scarf, always the same. For Angela Bennett, room 412. Richard felt cold bite his neck. "Grace wore a red scarf every Thursday," he murmured. "That's not all. Angela signed a document the day before her death, a waiver of any future guardianship." She slid a sheet across. "She was on morphine," Richard said. "She wasn't competent." "Exactly." The doctor noted she was crying, repeating, "I don't want to abandon them." Yet someone insisted she sign. She looked up. "Any idea who?" He had none. Not yet. That night, after tucking the girls in, Richard went down to Grace's office. He hadn't entered since her death. The drawers were locked. He found the small silver key in the pencil jar, where she always hid it. The first drawer held postcards, photos of smiling children, plastic hospital bracelets. The second, a black external hard drive. On the label, Grace's handwriting, "Open only, if they need you." He plugged it in. One folder. Ben Confidential. Password required. He tried Angela 0412. The hospital room. Error. He tried Grace Promise. The folder opened. Hundreds of files, paid invoices, ultrasounds, Angela's handwritten letters, and an audio file dated October 12th, 3 weeks before her death. Richard clicked. Angela's voice, weak, broken. If you're hearing this, I'm gone. Grace, I'm sorry. I signed. He said it was for their good, that you couldn't keep them legally. He said if I refused, he'd... Silence, a sob. He'd find a way to take them from both of you. A door noise, a muffled man's voice. Miss Bennett. The recording cut off abruptly. Richard rewound. Did he recognize that voice? He turned up the volume. A breath, then a deep, measured voice. He knew it. Davidson. The next day, he called Thomas. I need you here now. Thomas arrived in under an hour, suit rumpled, eyes red. Richard played the recording. Thomas paled. Good God, Richard. He forced Angela to sign. He wanted to ensure the girls had no legal tie to Grace. Why? Thomas ran a hand over his face. Because it's exactly what he's been waiting for, Richard. Article 14. You signed it yourself. If the board deems you compromising Collins Tech's reputation, they can declare you unfit and take control. And adopting 2 unrelated children just gave him the perfect reason. Richard felt the room spin. He wants my seat. He wants everything, Thomas corrected, and he's already started. That night, Richard found an email in his inbox. Anonymous sender. He opened it. A buyout plan. Collins Tech sold to an offshore holding, signed R. Davidson, future CEO. Attached, a photo of Anna and Mia playing in the garden, taken from afar through bushes. Below, they're adorable. It would be a shame if something happened to them. His blood froze. The threat hung cold and precise like an invisible blade. He called Inspector Lorna immediately. I have proof and a threat. Don't move, she said. I'm coming. Lorna and 2 police officers arrived at 10:17 p.m. Richard showed them everything. The drive, the recording, the email. She frowned. Davidson has powerful friends. We'll need more. I have more, Richard said. He opened another file from the drive, a Word document titled Plan B in Grace's notes. If anything happens to me, check Davidson's offshore accounts. He embezzled $2.4 million via fake foundation donations. I have the statements. Attached. Screenshots of transfers, fake reports, forged signatures. Her eyes widened. She was investigating him. She was protecting the girls, Richard said, and me. He stood, heart pounding. This was no longer a threat. It was war. The next day, Davidson was arrested at his office, handcuffs on wrists, in front of cameras he had summoned himself. Headlines exploded. Interim CEO arrested for fraud and coercion. Billionaire Collins cleared in posthumous love story. But Richard didn't watch the news. He was at the school, waiting at the gate. When Anna and Mia came out, they ran to him. We learned a new song, Mia said. Sing it to me on the way home, he said, scooping them into his arms. That night, he held a small ceremony in the garden. He lit a paper lantern like Grace did for birthdays. The girls wrote a note on scrap paper. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Mrs. Collins. They released the lantern into the dark sky. It rose slowly, then vanished among the stars. Anna looked up. She sees us every day, Richard said. In the house, the fire crackled. Mrs. Turner had made cookies. The girls slept with pumpkin between them. Richard sat by the fireplace, Grace's portrait beside him. He opened her journal where she wrote, "Kindness is not a duty. It's proof our hearts still work." He smiled. For the first time in 2 years, he felt whole. The next day, he signed the adoption papers. Anna Collins, Mia Angela Collins. Under the signature, he added a handwritten note. Promise kept. 1 year later, the Collins estate was no longer a mausoleum of marble and silence. The walls bore finger paint smudges, muddy sneaker prints, laughter that clung to curtains like garlands. In the garden, a cherry tree had been planted where Grace dreamed of a reading nook. Its branches, still slender, already bore a few pink blossoms in spring. Anna and Mia, now 8, ran barefoot in the grass. Their yellow and pink scarves fluttered behind them like flags. Pumpkin the stuffed dog had been joined by a real puppy, a golden retriever named Promise. He yapped joyfully, chasing the girls around the tree. Richard, in jeans and a plaid shirt, watched from the terrace, tea in hand. He hadn't worn a suit in months. Mrs. Turner came out with a tray of lemonade. "They'll wear out that poor dog," she said, laughing. "He's sturdy," Richard replied. "Like them." Collins Tech no longer existed under that name. Richard had sold his majority stake, not to imprison Davidson for fraud and coercion, but to an employee cooperative. The money created the Grace and Angela Foundation. Its headquarters? The renovated old St. Jude's Hospital building, painted pale yellow. Goal: cover medical and school costs for uninsured children, no conditions. On opening day, 3 families lined up from the lobby. Anna and Mia cut the ribbon, scissors too big in their small hands. That night after dinner, the girls settled on the living room rug with notebooks. "We have to write a letter for school," Anna explained, "to someone we miss." Richard sat on the floor with them. "Who did you choose?" "Mom and Mrs. Collins," Mia said without hesitation. They wrote in silence, tongues between teeth. When finished, they folded the pages into paper airplanes and launched them toward the fireplace. The flames swallowed them gently. Later, Richard went to Grace's mausoleum. On the desk, an envelope. "Johnny." He had never opened it. Grace's elegant, assured handwriting. To Richard, "Open 1 year after I'm gone." It was time. He unsealed it, one sheet folded in 4. "My love, if you're reading this, you've found the girls, you've kept the promise. I knew you would, even if you didn't yet. I was never brave. I just loved hard enough that fear had no room. You'll doubt, you'll hurt, you'll want to run. Don't. Love isn't an emotion, it's a daily decision. Decide every morning to choose them, to choose life. And when you're old, when they have their own children, you'll understand. We don't save people. We just give them enough love to save themselves. I'm proud of you. I love you forever. Grace." He cried, not from grief, but gratitude. The next day he took the girls to the cemetery. They placed 2 roses, one white, one yellow. Anna murmured, "We have a new home, Mom, and a dad." Mia added, "And Promise pees on the rug, but we love him anyway." Richard laughed through tears. "She knows all that," he said. "She's watching." On the way home, they passed the old Collins Tech billboard. It had been replaced. A new message in simple letters. Grace and Angela Foundation. Because no one should choose between health and hope. Anna looked up. "That's us?" "Yes," Richard said. "That's us." That night, he tucked the girls in. Mia yawned. "Daddy." He froze. It was the first time. "Yes, sweetie? You stay forever?" He kissed her forehead. "Always." Anna, already half asleep, murmured, "Promise?" He took both their hands in his. "Promise." In the house's silence, the wind chimes Grace had hung at the door tinkled. A clear, light, living sound. Richard went downstairs, turning off lights one by one. On the mantel, Grace's portrait smiled. Beside it, a new photo. Richard, Anna, Mia, and Promise. All 4 squeezed on the couch, covered in flour after a cookie battle. He touched the frame. "We did it, Grace." Outside, the moon shone on the cherry tree. Its pink blossoms trembled softly in the breeze like a heart still beating. Thank you for watching the video. Like and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. See you soon.